The desert stretched endlessly under the fading sun, casting long shadows across the sand as Lieutenant Ava Ramirez moved silently through the dunes, her boots sinking slightly with each step, her eyes scanning the horizon for any movement. The heat pressed against her body, and the weight of the mission settled like a stone in her chest. Every instinct told her something was wrong, and then a flicker of motion to the left caught her attention. A shadow slipping behind a ridge. She froze and crouched low, her breathing shallow and controlled, listening for the faintest whisper of sound. Hours earlier, her team had been advancing toward the abandoned outpost, thought to be empty, but intelligence had missed something critical. And now the quiet tension of the desert seemed to thicken around her. A sudden clatter behind her made her spin and catch the glint of a rifle barrel disappearing behind a sand dune. She cursed under her breath, knowing the next few moments would decide everything. She slid toward, cover the grains of sand burning her palms and knees, while the wind carried a whisper of footsteps closer and closer. Ava could hear the distant murmur of voices carried on the hot wind, each word indistinct, but their rhythm like a heartbeat in her ears. She paused to observe the enemy pattern, calculating her chances. The sun dipped lower, the shadows lengthened, and the desert became a maze of darkness and shapes. She pressed herself against the side of a dune and counted the heartbeats, imagining each second stretching into eternity. Her hand grazed the knife at her belt, the cold steel a promise of what she could do if the moment came. Suddenly, a shout rang out, piercing the quiet. She dropped flat to the sand and rolled into the shadows, her ears straining for the footsteps that followed. They came fast and heavy, boots scuffing the ground. The enemy knew someone was near, but they did not know where. The shadow moved between dunes like a phantom, every step measured, every breath deliberate. The adrenaline coursed through her veins as she closed the distance to the outpost. A crumbling wall rose ahead of her, jagged stones offering cover and concealment. She pressed herself against it, peering through a crack at the guards pacing outside, their chatter faint but tense. Inside the outpost, she could see movement, shadows passing across broken windows. Someone carried a stretcher, another leaned over a prone body. Her mind calculated escape routes and attack vectors, a plan forming with each heartbeat. She shifted silently along the wall, approaching a side entrance covered by a tattered tarp. The smell of smoke and sweat mingled in the air, the heat oppressive yet familiar, the life of a mission always balanced between danger and opportunity. Her hand hovered over the grip of her pistol, ready to strike if necessary. She prepared to move. A sudden noise behind her made her freeze, a single figure emerging from the haze of heat and dust. Blocking her path, the figure paused as if sensing her presence. She held her breath, calculating the odds. This could be a trap or an advantage. The figure stepped closer, and then the shadow of another appeared behind it. Ava recognized the formation. Immediately too late to retreat, and yet too prepared to panic, she drew a sharp breath and stepped forward. Her presence a silent warning. The first figure froze, eyes widening in surprise, and then action erupted. The desert became chaos. Gunfire cracked across the dunes and sand sprayed in clouds. She dove low, rolling behind a fallen piece of concrete, her mind racing, assessing threats and opportunities. Every motion precise, every decision critical. A figure lunged from the shadows. She spun, knife in hand, her strike swift and controlled. The opponent crumpled silently into the sand. No time to pause. Another figure charging from the ridge met the edge of her blade, and then another shadow flickered behind her. She dove forward, the ground hard and jagged, cutting her palms. She felt the heat of the battle pressing in from all sides. She scrambled over stones, ducking under fire. The sun disappeared behind the horizon, plunging the desert into twilight. The sounds of the outpost grew louder, the shouts of the enemy echoing against the walls, the darkness hiding threats and possibilities. Alike, she had no choice but to keep moving forward, each step bringing her closer to the heart of the outpost and deeper into danger. She felt the pull of the mission, the weight of her team, and the knowledge that one wrong move could end everything. At the edge of the main courtyard, she crouched low behind a pile of rubble, peering through the shadows. The guards, unaware of her presence, were gathered in tight clusters, their conversation low but urgent. She could hear a faint tapping, the sound of radio static, and a command issued. Somewhere just out of view, her mind raced. She needed to reach the central chamber, the place where the enemy leader was believed to be coordinating their plans, every instinct screaming caution, yet urging her forward. Then a sharp noise cracked behind her, the sound of sand shifting, a shadow moving faster than any human could manage. She turned and froze, eyes widening. In disbelief, a figure she did not recognize emerged from the gloom faster than any guard had moved. They paused for a fraction of a second, and then everything went silent, as if the desert itself was holding its breath, the tension thick and suffocating. She could not tell friend from foe. The seconds stretched into an eternity, and then a hand shot toward her, and everything changed. Her body tensed as the hand closed around her wrist, the grip strong, unyielding. She tried to twist and pull back, but the force dragged her forward into the shadowed figure, the desert wind whipping around them, carrying the scent of sand and gunpowder. She felt the cold metal of a weapon press against her side, and the soft voice of the stranger whispered something unintelligible in the chaos. She had no time to think, only to react, and yet she sensed an unexpected familiarity in the movements, precise, controlled, trained like her own. She froze, calculating every option, every escape route, her mind spinning faster than her heart could beat. Suddenly, the figure released her, and she stumbled forward, narrowly avoiding another guard who had appeared from the shadows. Eyes wide in shock, she spun her body and lunged, grabbing the stranger by the arm and pulling them into the cover of the rubble. They crouched together, shadows melding into the darkness. The stranger finally spoke low and urgent words that made her jaw tighten. "You should not be here. The enemy knows you are alone." She nodded, understanding the warning, yet the fire in her veins refused to yield. Retreat was not an option. From the courtyard beyond came the sound of movement, rapid footfalls and muffled shouts, a patrol scanning the perimeter, unaware of the two hidden in plain sight. Ava pressed herself against the stranger, studying their form, calculating the possibilities. Who was this ally, and could she trust them? The desert night seemed to close, enwrapping them in a suffocating embrace. She felt the adrenaline surge, readying her body for the next move. Her eyes darted to the main gate, a chance to flank the enemy, or a trap that could end everything. The stranger finally moved, signaling silently to follow. They slipped along the perimeter walls, shadows among shadows, every step deliberate, every breath measured. The courtyard lights flickering, casting jagged shapes across the sand, their progress slow, tense, each moment pregnant with danger. Ava's mind raced through contingencies. In the back of her mind, the knowledge that one misstep could turn this desperate maneuver into a fatal mistake. A distant shout made them freeze. The patrol had turned their heads, the wind carrying the echo closer and closer. Then, without warning, a flare arced into the night sky, casting harsh light across the desert, revealing movement everywhere. The guards shouted and scrambled. The shadowy stranger grabbed her, hand dragging her low against the rubble, the desert burning in the flare light. Yet the panic and confusion of the enemy created a fleeting window, a chance to strike a path through the chaos. Ava felt her heart hammering in her chest, every sense heightened. She could hear the faint rasp of breathing of the stranger next to her, the distant crackle of gunfire, and the pounding of her own pulse in her ears. They surged forward, slipping through the courtyard like phantoms. The enemy disoriented, the path toward the central chamber opening with every step. She knew she had seconds to act before the patrol regrouped. She could see the door just ahead, a sliver of opportunity glinting in the flare light. Her hand brushing against the cold metal handle, her mind racing with the possibilities of what lay beyond the door. And then a shadow moved in front of them, a figure stepping out from the darkness. And in that instant, Ava realized that nothing in her training had prepared her for what was waiting inside.